Stories covered in today's dailies. With me, I have Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard, and the Daily Nation. Just taking a look at the front page right now, a lot to talk about, all to do with the 2022 politics and how it's all shaping up. Apart from that, we'll also delve deeper into the coverage of terrorism in the country. I think on the 21st day of September, just tomorrow, we'll be marking the anniversary of the Westgate attack. Unfortunately, 67 lives were lost. We'll take a look at how the media can actually play a part in not just informing members of the public, but, you know, it's a dicey affair. You also have to inform and also be cautious about the sensitivity of the matter. We'll talk about that later on, so do stay with us. But before we do just that, we'd like to take a look at what's transpiring internationally. Taking a look at some of the pages that cover these stories extensively. We'll start with the Daily Monitor that covers extensively stories emanating from Uganda. Here you have it, one of them, Mr. President. Here are 6 ways to end gun violence in Karamoja, where they highlight the greatest mistake the government made was not to sustain the deployment of soldiers in the region, even as Africa's COVID-19 cases have just surpassed 8 million. South Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, and Ethiopia are among the countries with the most cases in the continent, according to the agency. Uganda loses 400 billion shillings in gold tax in 2 months, where the revenue loss is attributed to illegal channels through which the local traders conduct the trade. That's the latest from Uganda. Over to Tanzania, The Citizen covering extensively one of the major stories, construction of Dar es Salaam Regional Logistics Center to cost 264 billion. One of the major stories right there. Make sure you take a look at the article to be adequately informed, even as Tanzania's national debt has increased by $3.9 billion in 1 year, according to the central bank report released in July. President Hichilema revokes appointment of Zambia's High Commissioner to Tanzania and many others. More details on that. But let's take a look at what's happening in the neighboring country, Rwanda. Rwanda today, one of the main stories, traders not happy with mobile money charges. Effective September 1st, the traders will be charged with 0.5% of the total amount as transaction charges. There you have it, the latest on Rwanda today. Okay, so that's the latest on the international scene. Let's take a look at some of the major stories covered in today's dailies. And before we do that, let's just take a look at the latest political developments of the day over the weekend. This is what happened under the One Kenya Alliance, where the principals are confident of producing the country's next president in next year's general election. KANU National Chairman Gideon Moi, while speaking in Matungulu, Machakos County, said he was confident that the alliance will form the next government. His counterpart, Amani National Congress Party leader Musalia Mudavadi, also echoed the same sentiment, saying their pact was solid and was going to unveil a presidential candidate very soon. Emmanuel Toh with the latest.
The 2022 State House race is fast gathering heat as different coalitions now rush against time to solidify their bases. Sunday, KANU Chairman and Baringo Senator Gideon Moi stating the One Kenya Alliance's resolve to form the next government.
Sisi kwa OKA tuko pamoja, tutakaa pamoja na tunajua kwa hiyo team ndio itatokea yule ambaye ataingia ukulu.
Gideon, who was speaking after church service Kama fundraiser at Salvation Army Church, Kinyui in Matungulu, Machakos County, also called on Kenyans to elect leaders with a proven track record.
And we must warn Kenyans, please, let's not listen to the naysayers and the doomsayers, because we have to see the genesis of all this. Where were they before, when they were in government and doing what they were doing or supposed to do what they did?
And the other day I heard him say on media that the government is raising prices of fuel. Who is the government and who are you, Deputy President? You are part and parcel of this government.
The high cost of fuel, which has turned to be a thorn in the flesh for many Kenyans, also came up during the deliberations with leaders from Ukambani.
I'm sponsoring a petition to Parliament to make sure that Energy Regulatory Authority must tell Kenyans why is fuel in Kenya higher than in Somalia.
It's going to be extreme hardship to the people and to all sectors of the economy what has just happened. And we support the petition which the honourable member will be bringing to the House.
The sentiments came as Amani National Congress leader and OCA principal Musalia Mudavadi also said there was still time for the coalition to announce its flag bearer and that the process was in the works. He was speaking on a day 2 of his tour of Meru County, where he attended a church service at Methodist Church.
People are rushing to try and force us. They want us to go with their timetable. We have our own timetable. We are not going to, the IEBC has already produced a broad timetable.
The ANC Supremo is among top leaders eyeing the OCA ticket during the next year's general election. He told members of the clergy to be in the forefront of preaching peace. The pronouncements came as the political terrain continues to be tougher as the clock ticks towards the next year's general election.
You will not build a strong coalition by just sitting pretty. You have to talk to people.
Gideon Moi has recently announced that he will make a big announcement that will send shockwaves across the country.
Very, very soon now, Party Ascan will be making the announcement and be meeting, they're setting the dates for meeting of the national delegates conference, and then they'll be making an announcement then.
The One Kenya Alliance is now confident of producing the next president of Kenya as time ticks towards the 2022 general election. Emmanuel To, KTN News from Matungulu constituency, Machakos County.
Now, still on politics, and Deputy President William Ruto has continued his charm offensive in the Mount Kenya region. On Sunday, camping in President Uhuru Kenyatta's backyard of Kiambu County. This coming at a time a section of leaders from the region have caucused agitating for the position of presidential running mate for whoever expects to get their votes. Our senior political reporter, Jeff Kirui, with the details.
With the August 9th general election fast approaching, Deputy President William Ruto continued with his charm offensive, wooing the Mount Kenya region to his side. The DP on Sunday taking his campaigns to Githunguri in Kiambu County.
Yule Tuju na mwingine anaitwa Murathe wanataka kuuza chuma ya Pulpit kwa mtu ya kitendawili. Sasa mimi nataka niwaulize, kwa sababu wamesema sasa Jubilee iende kwa kitendawili. Nyinyi mnaenda kwa kitendawili ama tunaenda kazi ni kazi?
Tumesikia watu ya kieleweke wakisema ati wewe ulikuja hapa kwa mlima bila ruhusa. Huhitaji ruhusa ya mtu yeyote kuja hapa mlima Kenya. Kwa sababu sisi ndio tulikuchagua na wewe ni Mkenya na ni Deputy President wa Republic of Kenya.
Na form ya kupanga uchumi ni bottom up.
Ruto's allies who joined Speaker Justin Muturi in Embu County, piling pressure on the Speaker of the National Assembly to consider working with DP Ruto in the forthcoming general election. Muturi has already announced his presidential bid.
Tutazungumza na kila mmoja ambaye ni mtu wa nia nzuri kwa Wakenya. Lakini muhimu sana integrity ya viongozi. Wawe ni watu wanaojali maslahi ya mwananchi. Mtu anajua ukipewa nyadhifa yoyote ya serikali ni ya kutumikia wananchi, sio duka umefunguliwa.
A section of leaders from Mount Kenya region are agitating for the position of Deputy President in the 2022 polls. Among them TSP's Mwangi Kiunjuri, na Kenya's Martha Karua, Moses Kurias with his chama ya kazi, Peter Kenneth and William Kabogo were set to meet in Naivasha next week to firm up on a 6-point plan, including the region to secure a running mate position, irrespective of whether Mount Kenya will have a presidential candidate.
Ruto!
The caucus is also adamant to fold their parties to join UDA against DP Ruto's push.
So we are committed to unity of purpose. We are committed to multipartyism. Nobody is being told to leave their party, unless, of course, if they wish. We remain in our parties, but we have unity of purpose for Mount Kenya region.
And as campaigns intensify, Mount Kenya region continues to be the focal point due to the high numbers of voters that can swing the vote. Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
Now, still on politics, just what became of President Uhuru Kenyatta's prominent role managing his own succession politics? Well, this is the question in the minds of Kenyans and political pundits alike, following what appears to be a systematic retreat by the president to the political backseat as his key allies venture out in solo presidential campaigns without any word yet on what became of Kenyatta's efforts to unite the One Kenya Alliance and the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga political axis ahead of the 2022 polls. So what's the game plan? Our senior political affairs reporter Murimi Mwangi interrogates on this week's House of Cards.
If the 2022 succession politics was poker game, one man would undoubtedly have lifted the trophy for an astute mastery of strategy that has left everyone guessing his next move or where his heart really lies in the State House race. President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Nia yangu ni kuhakikisha ya kwamba wale ambao wataendelea hawatakuwa watu ya kunyanyasa na kuibia wananchi. Ama ni namna gani wenzangu? Nia yangu ni kuhakikisha ya kwamba wale ambao wataendelea watakuwa na hiyo roho ya kuunganisha Wakenya, sio kuwaganya Wakenya.
But with less than a year to the 2022 polls and just over a month since collapse of the Building Bridges initiative, which he had styled as his master legacy project alongside former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, Kenyatta suddenly appears to have taken a back seat. Quite a sharp contrast to his routine unity quest meetings involving Odinga and One Kenya Alliance core principles, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, Gideon Moi and Moses Wetangula, which had widely come to be touted as a prelude to launch of a grand political coalition for a lineup to face off with his estranged deputy William Ruto. So just what's cooking?
They are strategizing because everything was dependent on BBI. Now, with BBI having collapsed, they will need to play the game different. And secondly, it is quite possible that Kalonzo and Mudavadi have dug in. And it has gotten to a point where I think who realizes it's a waste of time pushing them to back Raila.
There is no much in terms of expecting the president to either endorse the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. What we are doing is that the conducive environment we are working in, this is what we expected. That's what we wanted. And indeed, we're happy with the progress.
At the first of the kind gatherings at State House on the 25th of February this year, it was Senator Moi that read the official statement after the closed-door meeting, also attended by Kitui Governor Charity Ngilu. At the time, some ODM leaders protested what they termed as attempts by the state to belittle Odinga to the level of his political juniors on the pretext of meeting political party leaders. A subsequent meeting, which had been slated for the 9th of March to coincide with the 3rd anniversary of the Kenyatta-Odinga ceasefire deal, was put on hold after the ODM leader contracted COVID-19, but was subsequently convened virtually on the 16th of March, and this time also roped in Machakos Governor Alfred Mutua, where the gathering prevailed upon his Maendeleo Chap party to quit the Machakos senatorial by-election. Kenyatta would subsequently convene yet another meeting at State House Mombasa on the 10th of August, just 10 days to the then appellate court BBI verdict. Sources said the team would subsequently meet to review the ruling, a meeting yet to be publicized to date, with all the top presidential hopefuls now busy on solo nationwide campaigns. Moi affirming Sunday that the next president will come from the outfit.
Already, we're in the process as ANC of selecting particular individuals especially members of parliament or senators, to go and sit on the negotiating table. We want to adopt the issue of consensus to settle on a single presidential candidate. Because if you go to nominations, we'll allow external forces to interfere a lot.
If we are saying we can only have one of them, then you are saying that out of the 4 or out of the 3 people in Oka, 3 of them are going to be in a political desert for a while, because there's no any other choice. It's not like if BBI were there, you would say you don't make it here, you can make it there, and so on.
You might now want to ask yourself, in whose interest would Mudavadi and Kalonzo play the spoiler game? But the 2 of them are intelligent enough, mature enough to know that they stand no chance. They can't even be a third horse.
I was hearing some people say this BBI is to propel Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga declared his presidency with or without BBI, and he's still on the ticket. BBI has nothing to do with his candidacy. BBI has nothing to do with Uhuru wanting to continue.
Uhuru takes a backseat, let Raila emerge, and you see how he has come. He looks very presidential. And then he declares, with Uhuru right in the background. I think from now onwards, Uhuru will need to support Raila from the background.
A key destination for top presidential hopefuls has been Kenyatta's Mount Kenya backyard, in what analysts term as attempts to build alliances with leaders from the region, with or without Kenyatta's direction on the political future of the mountain. But with the president still on the wheels, and the broad interest of the state machinery on who next takes over from Kenyatta, the president's final word no doubt will keep Kenyans and political pundits anxious as the August 9th, 2022 countdown continues. Murimi Mwangi, KTN News.
Well, still on politics, and this story will feature prominently in today's dailies, all to do with the pulpit and politics. Now, a week after various church leaders ordered for a total ban of politicians speaking to congregants, the churches were put to task just yesterday in a test to whether the order would be implemented. Kirinyaga woman rep Wangui Ngiresi was the first victim of the directive as she was barred from addressing the faithfuls at ACK St. Mary's Ngariama in Gishugu at a Thanksgiving ceremony. But it was business as usual in some other churches, which appear to have allowed politicians to address congregants. Our reporter Grace Nganga with this report.
All eyes were on various churches across the country to see whether the implementation orders barring politicians from addressing faithfuls would be effective. Today, just like any other Sunday, politicians flocked to various churches across the country, and although the time was limited for some, other churches like the ACK ensured that no politician was given a chance to speak politics from the pulpit. The first victim of the day being Kirinyaga woman rep Wangui Ngiresi, who was advised to wait until the service is over. This after various church leaders barred politicians from addressing the church after it became evident that political leaders were turning the churches into campaign fields as a political realignment occurs ahead of next August general election.
Na kama mimi ni kiongozi wa Mothers Union, kwa hivyo tunasema tusiseme kabisa viongozi wasipatiwe chance ya kuongea katika kanisa. Kama mtu ako na ushuhuda anataka kutoa, akubaliwe. Kama yeye ni kiongozi katika kanisa ile, wacha pia yeye afanye nini? Akubalishwe. It is good that Ole Sapit pia again atuite wa Anglikana. Alafu anaweza kutupatia ruhusa na atupatie ile viwango ya mtu anaweza kusema, kwa sababu nikisema nitasimama gavana, nimekosea mtu. Bora nisichape gavana katika kanisa. Ama namna gani?
At the AIPCA Githunguri, the local church leadership openly broke ranks with the presiding bishop, who a few days ago banned the church from entertaining politics.
Kwa hivyo kutokea siku ya leo, tumepiga marufuku wanasiasa wowote kuongea hapa mbele ya madhabahu, kuongea maneno ya kugawanya wananchi, maneno ya kugawanya washirika wetu, maneno ya kupiganisha watu wetu.
Deputy President William Ruto, who visited the church, was allowed to speak to congregants.
Maaskofu pamoja na wachungaji pia wajue ya kwamba mbali na sisi kuwa viongozi ama wanasiasa, sisi kwanza ni Wakristo. Mkisikia tukisema bottom up, tunasema mambo yaliyo katika Biblia. Sababu kanisa la AIPCA haina wamishonari wa kutoka Marekani, haina wamishonari kutoka mahala popote. Kama kuna kanisa ya mahasla, ni kanisa ya AIPCA.
And in Meru, the case was similar. ANC leader who has been touring Meru County attended a church service at the local Methodist church.
Watu wanachagua viongozi bila kufikiria. Alafu hatimaye wanaanza kulalamika kwamba kiongozi fulani hafanyi chochote, wanajiuliza nani alimchagua huyu na kadhalika. Jambo hilo tena ni vizuri tuweke viongozi kwa kichungi, alafu tuone ni nani anastahili katika ward, katika constituency, katika county.
And so it appears that churches are still divided on the issue of politicians addressing congregants in the church. Grace Nganga, KTN News, Nairobi.
So that's a picture of what transpired just yesterday in some of the churches right there in that report by Grace Nganga. But that report has been covered extensively in today's dailies. The front page of the Daily Nation is all to do with the battle for the pulpit. 2022 politics splits top church leaders, and it's the battle for the pulpit. Anglican, Catholic and Presbyterian church heads have barred politicians. But just yesterday, the Methodist Church in Kenya, through the presiding bishop, said this: politicians are our brothers, sisters, as well as members of the church. They cannot be denied an opportunity to address worshippers. So there's a sharp contrast between at least the Anglican, the Catholic, and other denominations as well. So we'll try and delve deeper into this, the role of the church in politics, and whether it is right to actually bar these politicians from addressing congregants during these services. Allow me to introduce our panelists. It's a full house today, and it's all men. I'm sure we'll look for a female panel next time, but thank you so much for making time. Gentlemen, I'm joined by, in my immediate left, Joseph Kioko, who is a familiar face on the show. He's a political analyst. It's always a pleasure to have you with us, sir.
Pleasure, Jesse.
Yeah, great to see you. Steve Mogaka, who's a lawyer advocate. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, Professor David Kikaya, who's a governance expert. Thank you for your time as well. Good morning. And last but definitely not least, Didmas Baraza, Member of Parliament, Kimilili constituency. And for obvious reasons, I'll start with you. Perhaps, were you addressing congregants just yesterday, even as you give us your thoughts on this divide? Is it okay to actually ban politicians from the pulpits? Did the Catholics and Anglicans have the right thinking when they made this decision?
I'll look at it from two perspectives. One perspective is that it depends on who want to address the gathering. If you have these persons who have come out to, to confess that they believe in African medicine, they believe in witchcraft, in sorcerers, then such kind of people should not be given any opportunity to move nearer the pulpit. They should be allowed in the church as any other sinners or any other person, but they should be shown where to sit, because they could interfere with the spiritual communication between the pastor, the person who is preaching, and the Holy Spirit. But as you see, we have got different denominations. We have some churches that belongs to one individual. I get saved today, I become a bishop, I have my church. So I will run my church the way I want. But these mainstream churches that are controlled from Nairobi or from Vatican or everywhere, I think we should respect what they say. If they say we should not go to their church to use the podium to address, we will respect that decision. Even contrary to the reporting where people are saying that only William Ruto was allowed to addressed the congregants yesterday and in Kakamega the other day is not true. We agreed amongst ourselves with the deputy that let us respect the church, and I'm sure if we wanted to speak, we could have spoken. But at times it's good to respect what the church leaders are saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well noted. Kyoko, let me start with you because a lot was happening in Machakos, specifically Ukambani County. So delve into this. The issue perhaps is not that politicians are part of the congregation. It's not that. It's the message that they pass while at the pulpit. But what's your take on the role of church in politics?
I think, first, thank you, Jesse. It's nice to have you back here on the morning show. I think you need to look at it in a holistic manner. The role of the church, not only in politics, but in development conversations within this country. And how the church interfaces with leaders. Today, when the church requires to build the altar or to build a church or to start a nursery, it reaches out to people within the society who have ability to mobilize resources. Okay. Most of the time you'd find it is politicians, the Honorable Didbas will be here, you'll find opinion leaders or people aspiring to be there. So in that process of reaching out, people come in and the messaging gets distorted. I like what Didmas has said here. We need to respect the church position. Let the presiding priest at a particular center make that decision on the basis of the information on the ground. It is truly unfair if you ask me to come do an arambe in your church. You know I'm a politician. You're not inviting me because I'm Joseph Kioko, the altruist, or the good person that I am. You are inviting me because you know this guy is a politician, he's the MP of this area, or he's an aspiring person. As he comes to pass the message of development and help me build the church, he also has his own individual message he would like to pass. But how you manage and coach that messaging is what will guide the discussions moving forward. Look at it this way. The Catholic Church made a pronouncement many years ago when the late Archbishop Ndingi Mwana Nzeki was alive. He said the church does not support the use of condoms. That's the Catholic Church. And for true, they have their own philosophical reason as to why they will not allow condoms to be used. Okay. And people thought about it as a negation in the fight against HIV. But they had their reason and they explained it to whoever who cared. The churches will always aspire to set a higher standard, a higher, different game plan when dealing with other people. In this particular case, they're saying, respect the altar. You cannot come to the altar and issue or utter epithets that divide people, yet the church is supposed to bring people together. That is the messaging of the church. All right. What the politicians do with it is to respect it and to respect the altar. This thing of saying, and this is where these our brothers of UDA, I think they miss it. They believe they are closer to God than any other person. So you go labeling people, this guy is Amchawi, this guy. You don't judge. Even the Bible that you quote very so often says before you judge the other, remove the log or the speck in your eye. So it isn't fair. Let them not believe that they are the only way, the truth, and the way for getting there. And it's really discouraging.
Wakili, but that's the currency in politics. They'll throw jabs left, right, and center. Let me rephrase this question then. I'm a member of parliament. I've been invited to a church for a harambe. Should I be allowed to speak? On the flip side, I'm a member of parliament and I'm a member of this particular church. I've just gone for the Sunday service. Should I be allowed to speak?
Thank you so much and good morning. Speaking as a lawyer, we are actually dancing around a very critical right protected in the Constitution, the right of expressing oneself. And this right is exercisable everywhere, in the streets, in bars, in churches. And as much as the priests has a right to deliver their message in their church, the congregation has a commensurate right to also express their view in the church. And I think our religious leaders need to be a bit moderate in taking certain positions because when I was a good Christian, I hope I still am, we were taught that Jesus never came for the holy ones. If the priests find that the conduct of politicians or whoever they brand so is anathema in religious sanctuaries. If I were a priest, those are the people I would give the front seat so that you listen to them and save them from that imprisonment of attitude, perception, and utterance. But as we go forward, and we have seen very serious religious leaders like Bishop Okulu, Bishop Muge, Bishop Mwananzeki, these were the very liberators of this country. Okay. That what the politicians say today was at one time being said by our religious leaders. So religion is supposed to be one of the toolkit for engineering society. And a definition of a politician and a priest, by the way, is not there. There is no demarcation because the bulk of the sermons we have from priests all over are very loaded with political intonations, insinuations, and whatever. So any church or church leader that is trying to run away from the reality that they have come for sinners, who are us, be we lawyers, be we politicians, then I don't think they are answering the call. They had better go for those they think are the worst speakers, have the worst messages, and that is really it. Okay. In my view.
Okay. So, Prof, do you agree with that? Because those who thought the church should actually draw the line thought they should be the moral compass in society. Shouldn't use the pulpit for messaging, according to politicians. So did they come in a little bit too late, as you add up to what our panelists have said?
Maybe I should take a much broader, in accordance with my colleague, view at this question, rather than, of course, my colleagues have, I think, trodden the domestic scene very well. First and foremost, I quite concur that the pulpit must be preserved for sanctity, for spiritual matters. And you are only allowed to speak so long as you are speaking anything other than politics as we know it in Africa. But the distinction between the church and the state is historical. In some cases, you could say it has never been there. The church was the state and the state was the church. In fact, the word Protestant was emanated from the fact that the people felt that the state was overwhelmingly suffocating their thoughts. So they protested, especially from the Catholic Church, which was, the Roman Empire time and so forth. Even when you go to Western Europe and you look at the churches which disengaged from the state, most of them disengaged because they did not agree the link between the state and the church. They wanted to remain distinct. They wanted to administer to the spiritual needs of the people. So having said that, I think I want to concur in broad terms with the fact that we need to leave the pulpit for spiritual inspiration. I'm aware, I'm a Quaker, and as such I will not deny my Christianity. There's a time when you go to a church and you are allowed to speak as a member of the church. What I take issue with is, why are these politicians now trooping to the church and demanding to be given a position to speak? In fact, sometimes it just is very embarrassing. Some of them crammed the previous night a few verses in the Bible. Then instead of saying Psalms, they are quoting Judges, or they are quoting James or whatever. It becomes very, very embarrassing. I think the politicians ought to be consistent. But indeed, they are members of the church. They are brothers, like a Methodist say, and the sisters. In fact, we can borrow a leaf from the late President Moi, God bless his soul. Normally, when he went to church, after the church, he stepped out, and then if he had something to say, he said it after and on the stairs of the church. I think I would concur with that. But to just completely blank them out, I think to me, is It's not very good. But also, my calling to the politicians is that if and when they are respected and given a pulpit, a church is a reconciling institution, is a peace institution. Let them confine themselves to passing the message to wananchi, rather than starting to ridicule Didymus, for example, on how he's, dressed or whatever. We ought to distinguish this, but definitely let's embrace politicians. Okay. Let's perhaps teach them on how they can behave themselves when they're in the church.
So Didymus, going forward, what is it to do? Because there's a blanket ban on political gatherings. The church perhaps is coming forth and saying politicians are not going to speak on our pulpits.
I think different churches have got their different spokespersons.
Okay.
Archbishop Ole Sapiti doesn't speak on behalf of certain churches, he speaks on behalf of Anglican churches. And I've had church meetings yesterday before I came here, and I had no problem. I had an opportunity to go to the Quakers, they have no problem. In my constituency, I'm like the missionary of very many smaller churches. I have built about 6 of them, not through Haram, but from scratch. So I think when I go to a church to pray or to solicit for votes, as long as I maintain my talk within the acceptable moral standards, there is no problem. And my good friend said that the Bible says, don't judge, but he's judging us within the UDA. So you cannot be judging some of us who are in UDA, saying that we are behaving as if we are more holier more closer to God than any other person, yet you are saying that you should also live for God to judge us when that time comes.
Yes, yes.
But my statement on the basis of the church not allowing certain people, I think is merited by the fact that if you have someone who claims, for example, that I don't believe in God, or that I'm a Freemason, and you see him in your church, will you give him a position with the pulpit? Definitely no. So we will go to churches.
Okay.
I like most Protestant churches. They will tell you, they will invite you for Arabi and say, Mheshimiwa, simama na sisi, tutasimama na wewe. So going there at some time, and when you are given an opportunity to speak, and of course we live in a democratic country, there is democracy where you sell your policy, and you have an opportunity to address a church gathering, you take advantage of the gathering, you sell your policy, and you ask them to also stand behind you in the forthcoming general elections. There is no moral problem that you are creating in that particular time.
Okay.
You know. So we should, we even have seen even churches themselves, branches fighting over the other. You saw a few days ago there was wrangles in some church where one faction never wanted the presiding pastor to be there. Sure. So all those things are there. Okay. We live in a society with the same fabric.
So according
we should not read too much.
Politics and church is not inseparable.
Yeah, and by the way, we have some undertones that what happened in Butere at that time was also engineered by politics. Okay. Of course, the people are there say that some people had planned to heckle a particular leader, so that leader, to save himself from that embarrassment, he had to communicate to the bishop that please make an announcement that none of us will be allowed to speak here, so that we leave when none of us had been heckled.
Okay, so, so this is interesting. And why is there so much focus in churches? I don't see any mosques hosting politicians. Now you see there's a clear line between religion and politics when it comes to mosques, but it's different in churches. Is the church and politics inseparable according to you, as you respond?
From historical, I think Prof has given it the nature of religion in the state and state in the religion.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church, by extension even the Vatican itself, is church and government. Intertwined. So, and in Kenya, really, look at where the residence of the Archbishop of ACK is, next to State House. He is the presiding priest of State House, basically. So they're intertwined, but that's not the issue. The issue is the convoluted nature of our politics and the bad behavior of politicians that is brought to disturb.
Yeah.
Or to declutter or to clutter the good standing that the altar of the Lord is. That is what the church is saying. Let's separate. While the politicians can misbehave in parliament, they can misbehave in bars, they can fight in their meetings, they can do whatever it is that they do and succeed in. That's their space. But when they come to the church, let them respect the church as is and is provided. I think that dichotomy needs to be made without belittling how the church is, how it conducts itself, or the wrangles within churches. But beyond that, I think the problem with this call is that it has come a little bit too late.
Okay.
People, we've seen our Muslim brethren, and you've brought it here. You've never seen Aden Duale inviting Didmas to a mosque to do politics. You've never seen the Muslim Brotherhood calling our politicians, even in processions of the funerals. People are not given audiences to speak because the Muslims have set a certain standard of respecting their places of worship. Now, the church, as is, in whichever nature of the different dichotomy that is, have created a situation where the pulpit is the alternate avenue of addressing voters. Now, had this ban started a long time ago, instead of it happening 1 year to an election, then there would have been a mature conversation without any particular person feel like this policy or this direction the church is taking is targeting us, or is targeting our particular group, or is targeting me. But if you continue this conversation further on, then guidelines will come out. People will look at how best behavior is established. As Prof has said, President Moi, the late President Moi, would address congregants after the service. Is that in order? Can the church accept such a... So these guidelines need to come out, but it must be consistently played out so that it doesn't come 1 year to the election, then people start saying, oh, you are bringing this thing, and we know you've never been to church before.
Okay, so it might be a little bit too late in the day.
It's the timing.
Okay, so we'll have this discussion right after the break. Wakili, just hold on to your thoughts. Let's take that short break. When we come back, we'll continue reviewing the headlines, that being amongst the major stories you can expect in today's dailies, the role of the pulpit in politics, even as we'll take a look at the tough economy as it is. Fuel price